So hopefully you're in the right room. Objectives this session, if you haven't seen them, are pretty much as advertised. We're going to give a very brief overview of Neuro-Linguistic Programming, the name that trips off the tongue. But mainly, we want to not have many in the way of PowerPoint slides, sorry about that, but to have a chance for you to experience a couple of techniques of NLP. Hopefully through that experience you'll have a chance to understand a little of the power of it and see whether you want to find out more another time. We hope to have a little fun along the way, in the way of introductions, I'm from the business change side of Steria. I've been a management consultant or a business consultant pretty much all my life. And I started life as a civil engineer. I've been involved basically in projects almost the whole time, I tend to think of four aspects. There's a strategy piece, which for us obviously isn't necessarily always the dominant part, and then people, process, technology. So I've always had the people side and the other sides, process and technology, working in unison. Linda, do you want to briefly introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Linda. I do a number of different things, mainly for myself. I run a couple of businesses as a consultant. I also do NLP training, and I do that in some public programs and in-house programs too. I've been doing NLP for about 8 years now, and it's been something that I think people probably will have heard the quote, you know, if you find something that you do that you love, you'll never have to work another day in your life. And I certainly feel like that about the things that I do. I do some coaching with people as well, so I do some one-on-one coaching with NLP, including my client this week who's just got his first England cap to play for rugby at Twickenham, so that's quite exciting. I'll tell you more about that if you would like.
Great, thank you. At this point, if anyone's got any particular objectives out of the session, other than coffee, do you want to shout out anything?
Finding out where you're coming from, really.
Okay, we'll try and deal with that one.
Where you think you're going.
Yeah, okay. Okay, well, if that's fine if people haven't, but wanted to ask. And sharpen the saw is probably a number of you will recognise as Stephen Covey, reading back again that modern book, I tend to find it still full of truth. So hopefully this is part of your personal journey. So in terms of self-development, each of us is the project, and hopefully this is one little bit towards that. Obviously at the front we're hoping to learn just as much as anyone else in the room.
So what do you mean exactly by sharpen the saw?
Oh, sorry, sharpen the saw is in Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. There's loads of very good principles, but the last one is sharpen the saw, and that basically the anecdote is about the person who's spending all day cutting down this great big tree trunk with a saw, and someone suggests, why don't you sharpen the saw and do it quicker? And he says, I'm too busy sawing. And the meaning is continue learning all through your life.
Oh, I see. It's just that I know how to sharpen the saw, and I was having a bit of difficulty connecting the two.
Ah,
I beg your pardon.
that's well. Hopefully that cut through it.
Quickly. Sharpening the saw is a very sensible thing to do. I can vouch for it.
Excellent, good. Well, it's an even more practical application than I'd thought of there. Okay, now just in terms of what does NLP mean to me, because I'm not 100% a obvious person to have done it, but there's a few things I'll share by way of introduction. One is that when I talk about it and deal with it and refresh my mind about these ideas, it does make me feel very positive. And I think we all know that positive mental attitude, etc., is very helpful. And straight away when I'm dealing with NLP, that's one of the things it gives me. So every day's sunny when I'm dealing with this stuff. It also is a very practical benefit. It does empower me because it gives me a set of extra tools, which you can get. A number of the tools you can get through other things. So there's a lot of NLP which isn't unique to NLP, and there's some things which where a smaller number of things which are. So there's a lot of ways of coming to the same good truths, but it does give me some tools. One particular thing which helped a lot is I was doing a job for Moby Neal in Cairo, and we were out there for about 6 or 8 weeks, and we're doing a project which is fundamentally technology and things wrapped around, and the HR director was involved in part of it. So we worked with him, and I was working with him reasonably closely, and he had a problem with his boss, who was the CEO, and he was wanting to renew his contract, and he also wanted to get a greater feeling that his boss actually believed in him, was going to support him. So we went through an exercise called 3 perceptual positions, which I won't say anything more about now because we're going to do it in a little bit. And the upshot of that is he did extend his contract. He was a lot happier with his relationship with the CEO, and the next thing he did was buy his first ever book on NLP. So it goes to show that, and of course from a stakeholder management viewpoint, anything I needed to happen on the HR side from then on was going to happen. So some of these things are very practical. They can turn into real dollars, if you like, and as well as making a difference. And it felt good to make a difference to him as an individual. It gives me entries into new worlds. We all know that people are unique. Despite the fact that groups of people can be described surprisingly well by Myers-Briggs and all those good things, each person is very, very individual, and I kind of have a much deeper understanding of that now, having studied some of this stuff than I did before. And you also find that in my case, I was not looking at people's eyes, and I could, if I met someone, I couldn't tell you afterwards, say what colour their eyes were, and I only realised that through doing some of this stuff. So there's all sorts of weird things which happen. Finally, on the photography, there's some. Well, it's one of my great hobbies, photography, and there's obvious things like if you want a model to perform in front of the camera, then A, you've got to persuade them to pose, and B, you've got to get them relaxed when they are there, and NLP is good for that sort of thing. But there's a deeper layer, and it's often said that a photograph looks both ways. And it's out into the external world you're photographing, but also inwards back at the soul of the photographer, because the type of images you take reflect who you are. So there's quite a lot of parallels which you might be able to draw a bit later on. Anyway, let's move on from that. But messages, for me it's positive, and we've heard from Linda it's true for her as well in her different way. And now I want to give Linda the very simple task of explaining what NLP is in a nutshell. I'm going to hand over this microphone. I'm not used to using.
Okay, so it's been about 30 years in the making. There are about 60, 70 different books about it, and all sorts of people who contribute to the field in all sorts of ways. It's a question that's not easy to answer, and certainly not one that's easy to answer in the 2 minutes that I've decided to give to this slot. You can perhaps also see that I like an incredibly detailed slide with lots of information on it. NLP is a generative collaborative field, principally stemming from kind of the early 1970s. Some of you may have heard about people like Richard Bandler and John Grinder, who were kind of the fathers, co-developers of NLP, if you like. And there are multiple different descriptions about what NLP actually is. You can go and read about that in various different books and do your own research if you're interested in it after today. One of the things that we have prepared for you as well is a little kind of history of NLP, should you want to take that away. But for me, NLP is not about listening and learning in that way. it's about doing and experiencing. So we want to kind of get onto that as quickly as possible. Any of you who didn't quite believe us when we said it was going to be interactive may want to take a deep breath now. Because we are going to be exploring some of the main areas around NLP, which predominantly is about outcome orientation. How many of us know what we don't want and don't really often think about what we do want or where we're going? Really, really important in NLP. Really important if you're working with other people or you're trying to provide services to other people who don't know what they want. They just know what's bad or what's difficult or what's wrong. Okay, and you're trying to provide a solution for them. Very difficult to find out what that is. Behavioural flexibility. If what you're doing isn't working, do anything else. Hopefully we're going to get a chance to explore and play with that a little bit this evening. Rapport is about how you work with other people, and sensory awareness is about the things that you pick up that people do and they say outside of what you might ordinarily see. Okay, so this is kind of about seeing the world with different eyes and experiencing the world in a different way. And I hope very much that we will get an opportunity to experience that for each of you in the room this evening. She says with a slight kind of smile on her face at some of the nervous expressions that are being reflected back at me. It will be okay, I promise. Okay. And so the first thing we're going to get you to do is to get into we want to get into 4 groups. So I think it's going to be about 4 groups of about 5 people. The chairs do not have to stay the way that they are, so it might be useful for you to kind of get yourself into 4 spaces, kind of different corners of the room. Look around the room, see if there's somebody that looks interesting to you. Club together and form a space. Go!
You guys are in the middle for a little bit
I'm very mindful of being 5'2" when I'm stood at the front of rooms. Right, perfect. So we've got you into 4 groups. What we want to do is to get you to imagine that you are groups of either people who are leading a project or a piece of work, or the customer who is being provided, who's having that work provided for them. Okay. So if we say this group over here in the back, we would like you to answer the question: what makes a good project or a good piece of work from the perspective of project program managers? Okay. This group here. What makes a bad project from the perspective of project program managers? Okay, so that's who you are. Good project, but you're the customers. Okay. Bad project, you're the customers. Okay. We're going to power through this. This is only going to be a couple of minutes. So what we want you to do is just to think about kind of the top level from your own experiences or from experiences you know that other people have had. What would be the key things that would make either a good or bad project from the perspective of the group that you are in? Okay? Make sense? Go forth.
So far, so good.
overrun. No surprise.
Good communication. You know, so I mean, I guess.
I'm not writing a general news
delivering something that's worth delivering. As he doesn't love the project.
So this is
We might not know what we want either, but nevertheless, they listen.
You can relive whatever traumas you've had if you need to. There's too many. Just pick your favourites.
because really, in actual fact, both the customer and supplier, their objectives will be the same.
No, I mean,
And use this
I was thinking, of something so trivial, because it could be quite a messy situation, like having a kitchen or something, having
have the same thing, but how, you know, terminology, how we what we need to do is start writing deadlines.
The word ought coming out in this context.
These are the customer groups, aren't they?
Well, I didn't quite figure which groups are which. These customers at the front.
I think they're customers at the front.
Projects at the back.
Yeah.
Which side? Is this the bad side?
It's bad, that's good. Thank you.
destroys the quality of the organisation. Actually makes take people wander in and make them.
There's also it's going to actually show benefits.
They can walk in, they can make a right
System or whatever it is, and you can see the last
always tending to be the main knowledge of the project itself, but also the main knowledge of the organisation.
You might choose
Because you might say they don't find the department
They might not find the right thing.
it makes you feel you feel better about yourself.
Don't find out what the managers are trying to deliver, or they talk to the managers and don't understand.
down there shows
You need
benefits.
both of them.
Oh yes, we have to.
I've come across them where they say, you know, don't bother us, we've got a job to do.
Understanding what the regulatory environment of an organisation is. Because sometimes they don't have very much.
I think we have an odd number.
Sorry?
I think we have an odd number.
Right.
So we may need to when people get into pairs, we need to just make sure we've kind of got everybody working.
We enjoyed the first one.
So we might just get one of these
But
guys.
if you can see them,
Yeah, get them
that's
to.
Just
Just going to give you another couple of minutes, so just kind of wrap up your thoughts.
differences clearly see as level of detail.
Some that do with relationships. Yeah, there does seem to see some of them do different things. Some of them do with the project agreements, some of them do with the organisation itself and the way it's done. Some of what, some of how.
Creating very unique parameters to measure the successful outcome.
You may want to elect somebody in your group to be the person that's going to speak on behalf of your group.
Project
the world doesn't collapse overnight.
Okay, just kind of call them.
Are we going to do the feedback verbally to things like that?
Yeah,
So much more. I'm putting that down to floor management. Floor management and a whole range of areas.
Right, you got 30 seconds to decide on your final pieces.
Yeah. That's what floor management. That's what floor management is designed there.
Done.
Done. The schedule. Yeah.
Bad stuff is really
Done. Done. Excellent. Excellent. Right. We just want to hear from each of the groups. Only just kind of a minute a group. Just kind of top couple of things you talked about, maybe what the most important thing was that you talked about, general themes that you kind of came across. So which group would like to go first? This group. So who are you?
We're the customers.
And are you happy? Is it your? It's a
good project.
good project from a customer perspective. Far away.
No particular order. Meets our requirements.
Mhm.
On time and budget.
Mhm.
Good communications with the provider. Meets our expectations, which is not necessarily the same as requirements.
Yes.
While the project was going, we, the customer, can get on with our day job.
Okay, so it can just kind of go on in the background
Doesn't
without.
over disrupt.
Yeah.
Smooth execution of the project and smooth takeoff. In other words, when the system goes live, it doesn't collapse on day one.
Yep.
It's not disruptive to our normal business.
Mhm.
It shows benefits, and more to the point, we feel benefits.
Okay.
Afterwards, we actually enjoyed the process, and we had trust in whoever the provider was.
Okay. Lovely. Thank you. Who?
Sounds like all our projects, doesn't it?
Yeah. Sounds like every project I've been on anyway. So who had a good project from the project perspective? You guys. Would you like to go next and tell us what you had?
So I think we said the most important thing was that you're actually delivering something useful.
Okay.
It's actually going to be filling a hole.
Mhm.
And then some other things, you have to have viable objectives.
Mhm.
Be efficient in terms of time and cost and deliver quality. You need satisfaction from users and customers.
Mhm.
You need cooperation between the project management team and bringing the customer and the stakeholders
Mhm.
into that
Mhm.
team, cooperating with them. And you need something that's feasible to deliver.
Okay.
Given the resource, was it?
Yeah.
Feasible given the resources.
Yeah. Okay. Lovely. Thank you very much. So this was the customer group bad project from a customer perspective.
Yeah, sort of.
Right. What
That's
forgot?
Lumped into three. One lump really covers, and I'll go into the items, but one lump is really to do with the project deliverables, of what happens. Some of it's to do with the project management, how it's done, and there's other bits which are really to do with just generally the people in the organisation.
Okay.
So no particular order is, do we get what we want, or what we need, more to the point.
Okay. What we need and what we want sometimes
so
being
if they
different
if
things.
We don't get what we want or what we need.
Yeah.
What we need is probably the right word. Missed deadlines, missed budgets, poor communication on progress, lack of listening on the part of the people delivering the project, poor handover, lack of clarity when it's delivered about what's been delivered.
Okay.
Nothing post-delivery is rubbish, i.e. there's no decent post-delivery, we don't know what we're supposed to do after we get it. There's poor understanding of the culture, politics and relationships within the organisation, so they actually make a mess of the organisation, ask the wrong question to the wrong people. Talking to the right people, and that means the managers who are paying for it and the people who have to work with it.
Okay.
And there's two lots really there, and getting that balance right and understanding who you're supposed to be delivering to.
Yeah.
Understand the policies and regulatory environment you're existing in, because some companies don't have it, some companies have a lot.
Mhm.
And really to do with the project governance and management and that being done correctly as well. So
A lot about understanding and
Yeah.
communication. Yeah. Okay, lovely. Last but not least.
Yes, well, our headings, I think, very much higher level than a lot of the detail ones.
Okay.
Because our first one is probably poor management. That can be risk management, financial management, management of production, all those things.
Mhm.
Then poor communication was defined as something which causes projects to go sour.
Mhm.
Ill-defined requirement.
Mhm.
Poor change control. Change control controls the scope of what it is you're trying to do overall. There's nothing like mission creep. Communicating with the wrong personnel.
Okay.
People who don't talking about requirements to people who don't have a stake in the project, for example.
You sound like you're talking from experience.
What was her name again?
Poor motivation.
Okay.
And by that we mean motivation across the board. So,
Mhm.
you know, if the customer doesn't really want the product,
Yeah.
it's going to, you know, it's an outsourcing thing, they're
Mhm.
not going to have a buy-in. Or if the programmers who are developing it aren't motivated.
And down to the project teams as well.
Yeah, yeah. Any element of that, if the motivation's not there, it's not going to be good.
The last one is that the outcome does not meet expectations.
If people knew what the expectations were that they had. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Get all of that.
Every word.
Perfect.
As soon as
Yeah.
the tape recorder.
Yeah.
They all happen on your project.
Yeah. No.
Well, one side does.
Yeah. The reason that we asked you guys to do that is because one of the things that we're going to go and have a look at in a minute is about different perspectives. When you're kind of working with a group of customers, or you're working with people, sometimes you can have the same words. So I notice a lot of the words that you have on there about communication, motivation, requirements, all of those kind of wonderfully woolly, vague nominalizations that don't tend to actually mean a huge amount until you actually pick it down to a different level and work out what do we mean when we say good communication and what that means. So a lot of similar words, but also kind of different perspectives, and it's possible for you to take on a different perspective even though it's not necessarily a perspective that you are normally in. So for the customer groups here, you can kind of imagine what it's like to be a customer, or you have been a customer. Likewise, if you've been working on a project or you've never really worked in project management and you're imagining what that might be like. It is possible to take different perspectives. Yes? Yes. Would you like to get an experience of what we talk about when we're talking in NLP about different perceptual positions? Yes? Find a... Yeah! You've all been primed. Find a partner and stand up somewhere in the room where you can face them.
If there's not enough space, there's a bit more outside.
But somewhere where you can still see me. Okay. As long as you can still see me. Right. Have you found your partner? You are going to now be asked to do something incredibly complex. Could you label yourselves, one person is A and one person is B? Okay, so we need an extra person. Yeah. Is that all right? Yes. Have you all labelled yourself thus? Excellent. What we're going to do is an exercise that comes from Aikido. I don't know if any of you have kind of come across that as a martial arts, but it's a way of being able to experience what we mean. And this is kind of me trying to get you to the shortcuts of what we're talking about when we're talking about NLP. And the reason that kind of both Rob and I would believe this is because, partially because of the type of NLP training that we do. It's not just about what you can kind of cognitively understand, but also what you can understand through processing it within your body. Okay, so we want you to get an experience of different perspectives. The person who is A, okay, I would like you to stand opposite to the person who is B, like this. Person B, I would like you to point like this at them. Don't touch them, but point at them.
This feels like home.
It may be a position you are familiar with, it may not be. Really kind of point, either pointing so that you're right at their chest or to their face. Okay? It may feel a little bit uncomfortable for the people that are being pointed at. It is supposed to. Okay? If you are being pointed at, just experience what it is like to have the finger pointed at you. And look the person in the face that is pointing at you. And notice what happens within your body to have another person pointing at you in the way that they are. Yeah? Okay. The people who are pointing, okay, people who are pointing, freeze, stay where you are. The person who is being pointed at, what I would like you to do is to move up alongside the shoulder of the person who is pointing at you and to look down their arm at the place from whence you came. Okay? Yeah. Now notice what it is like to look from a different perspective at the same thing that you just experienced. Okay? So how different is it for you to be looking down the arm that is pointing at the space you were in versus how it is to be stood in the space you are. Yeah? Yeah. Yeah. So what you see, what you notice, what it feels like for you in your body. Okay? And then move back to the place you came from. Okay? What I want you to do then is switch. So if you've been pointing, get pointed at. Yeah? Notice what it's like to be pointed at. See what you experience in your body. And then once you've got that, move to the point and look down the shoulder of the person. Okay, now what I want you to do is people stay frozen who are pointing. The people who are looking down the arm of somebody, move somewhere completely different in the room. And look at the person who is pointing at you, but from a completely different perspective. Anywhere you like. You can take a couple of different perspectives. You can wander around if you want to and have a look at the person who is pointing at you. Yes. Okay. And then return to your partner and allow them to let their arm have a bit of a rest. Okay. And take a seat. Okay. Ha! I hear somebody saying that wasn't my everyday experience. Results. So, okay. What did you notice? What did any of you notice that you would like to share with the group from having done that?
When the finger was pointed at you, certainly the internet's pointed, you tensed up a bit.
You can feel it, and you.
So when you're looking down to the arm, you're much more relaxed, or from a different angle as well.
Yeah. It kind of, you can experience the same thing very differently.
I
Yeah,
certainly
yeah.
enjoyed
the pointing better than the
Okay. Okay. That tells us something about you, perhaps. You had something down
yeah,
here?
it's the same thing really. It's, you feel a lot more comfortable and relaxed when you're not being pointed at.
Yeah. You can kind of actually sense the difference in your body. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Can I chuck a cat among the pigeons and say absolute zero variation in response?
Okay. That's okay. That's okay. Yes. Oh,
Sorry.
yes. This
I
here.
was thinking that to some extent I think that my views were coloured by the fact that I knew this was an exercise.
Okay.
If I met, well I met Jonathan before, but
Yeah.
if earlier we'd met him and he suddenly
Yes.
pointed at me,
Yes.
I think my reaction would be
Very
a
different.
heck of a lot
Yes.
different.
And I can invite you to have an exercise where you're just having somebody pointing at you, which is, it's quite an aggressive, confrontational thing. It's designed to provoke a response. But in an actual, yes, exactly, yeah. But you can still get a response of what it's like, because culturally we understand what that means to be pointed at in that way. Yeah.
If somebody
Yeah.
did this, I think that might be just a different response from that.
Or maybe somebody will do that to you later. Yeah, sorry. You were next to the question.
As the pointer, once my target had moved away, and I
Yes.
stood just pointing, that felt different as well.
Felt different as well. Yeah, yeah.
They felt silly.
Felt silly just to be
Yeah,
stood
yeah.
there pointing. Yeah, into space. Yeah.
When you stood beside the person who was pointing, you felt like you were sharing,
Yeah.
you were
Ah.
doing the same thing with them, but when
Yeah.
you were the other way, you felt
Yeah.
somewhat in opposition in a way.
Yeah, yeah. Kind of what it's like to, to walk a mile in another man's shoes almost, to kind of see it from a different perspective. Yeah. Was there something else over there? Was that kind of, no?
There was something you just mentioned earlier. Is there an element of power actually pointing at
Yeah.
someone as well? So you do,
Yeah.
there's something there.
Yeah. The non-verbals of the way people hold their body, the way they use their body, are often much more powerful communicators than the words they actually say. And one of the things that we talk about in NLP around kind of the things that are outside people's normal awareness, any one of you in this room would know that if I was stood here going, I'm really excited to be here, I'm very motivated to talk to you about NLP, and I really enjoy public speaking, would know that there was virtually nothing to believe about what I was saying to you, because you would be picking up the incongruency in my body language. Yes, yeah, absolutely. Without somebody saying anything to you, they can generate a response just by pointing their finger in that different way. Okay?
How did it feel when you went to one side and you weren't in either of the two initial positions?
That's more relaxing. What do you mean? Looking at the person from another perspective?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It did feel that they're being silly. Because they're just pointing at nowhere, and you've got an advantage point of observing.
Much more detached, you're not really.
Yeah.
That's right.
Mhm.
You were
Yeah.
detached.
Right,
Yes.
okay.
You can detach from it.
Yep.
You know, be awkward and ask a question here.
Yes.
To what extent do you think that these responses are prime, as opposed to intrinsic, even culturally? I mean, in other words, to what extent do you think that we are fulfilling your supposed preconceptions by delivering these answers to you?
I haven't, don't have a particular answer to that. But what we're trying to do is to get people to not think, but to experience.
Yeah, what I'm
yeah.
basically getting at is whether we are saying what we subconsciously believe you desire to
Mhm.
hear.
Potentially.
If that includes giving us a large amount of money, that's great.
There's
Yes.
plenty of examples of this phenomenon, quite unintentionally, yielding quite dramatic results, where the behaviour plays up to the expectation of the investigator.
Well, let's just say there's many things that play here simultaneously.
Yeah.
And
I'm just asking
that's
because
one
it's
of
an
the
potential influence.
Sure.
This is an exploration, and any response is welcome. So if you say, as you did, it didn't do much for me, then that's absolutely fine. That's kind of,
Yes, I'm
that's
trying to
welcome.
get at the truth rather than
Yeah.
just being absolutely
Yeah.
fine. I know I'm absolutely fine.
Mhm.
I'm just trying to
Okay.
get at the truth.
I think
Okay.
it's fair enough to say pointing is fairly aggressive.
Yeah.
If you go into many pubs, as it try this experiment out.
That's not something I'm going to recommend. Thank you for the invitation. Yes.
The appointee has had a few more drinks.
Yeah. We're checking my insurances after this, Rob. Yeah. Do you want to? Yes. Better check that. Just a minute. What we kind of wanted to kind of get to, and this is one of the first exercises that we're going to do this evening, is around something in NLP called perceptual positions. Okay, and this is something that I use in coaching practice. It's something that NLP took from the work that was done with people like Virginia Satir and Milton Erickson, and is something that I also use in business as well. It can be really useful when you're working, you've got two kind of collaborating groups, so really great when anything to do with kind of projects. You've got your customers, you've got your project teams, how are they going to work together? Particularly in situations when sometimes there is a bit of a conflict or a bit of a misunderstanding about what people mean. Communication, for example, being one of those great examples of that. The perceptual positions that there are then are what you would start off with typically, which is first position. I am being myself, I am looking through my own eyes, I have my own opinions about what's going on here, I am interpreting the circumstances in my own way. Yeah? And that might mean that you are whatever descriptor you choose to use depending on where you are in kind of the relationship you have with that person. Second position then is to go to the position on the person's shoulder when you are looking down their arm. So what is it like for me to drop kind of my own my own interpretation of this and to look through the eyes of another person, to take a different perspective on the situation? If I sat in my customer's shoes, if I sat as one of my stakeholders and looked back at myself or looked back at the work that I was delivering, how would I interpret it? Yeah, give you multiple descriptions of what's going on. The third position then is about kind of moving to a point where you can examine the relationship. Sometimes that has to be quite a long way away, but somewhere else in the room where you can see the dynamic and the interaction that's going on between those two perspectives. Okay. The idea behind this is to give you multiple descriptions to help you get a deeper and greater enriching understanding of what's going on and to be able to find better ways of being able to work, perhaps potentially when there is a conflict about what's going on. Yes?
Is there any significance in the lifeguard's chair as the observer, or is it simply an observer?
I was Googling.
It only works for lifeguards.
Yes.
No.
No.
Whether you have whether there's a
No.
cultural influence or whether it's simply an observer.
It tells you very little about my kind of thought processes whilst I'm Google image searching. Yeah. I don't know if there's anything that you would add to that.
The bit I'd like to add is that everyone would think that they would be always able to do this, and some people actually are much better at it than others.
Mm-hmm.
I think all the people in this room I'd expect to be pretty good at this because we spend our time judging situations a lot and we're quite analytical. This is the most challenging of the three positions. And here, the ideal is not thinking about what the other person is thinking. It's about trying to put yourself as if you were the other person. So what are they seeing and hearing in their own mind? And that's a subtlety which is a bit special to NLP.
Quite an interesting example of the third person perspective, the observer perspective. Quite often working in the public sector, when you're dealing with sort of like taking presents or taking sponsorship or sort of like free trips to a show, you think,
what job do you have?
What would that look like if someone wrote about it in the newspaper?
Yeah.
No, do I want that story to get out into the newspaper? No, how would it appear to the general public? Oh, well, I better not do it then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, interesting point.
Yeah.
Again, looking at it from that different perspective. And these could be, we're doing this as individual people, but you can imagine this translates into stakeholder groups. But This doesn't translate into stakeholder groups so well because you're trying to be in the world of the other person.
Yeah. Okay. So.
It's a mental exercise rather than physically getting up and walking around.
Oh no, we're going to do it getting up and walking around.
But in real life, though?
Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
People think you're a bit bonkers if they start getting up, looking down, saying, "Get out of that seat, I want to sit there."
Well, it depends. I mean, if I'm working with someone and I'm coaching somebody, you can actually get 2 chairs and you can get somebody to move from one chair to the other because there's something that shifts in the dynamic when you're kind of looking back from actually physically looking from different perspectives. In a coaching environment, that's absolutely fine. You can do it more as a kind of intellectual exercise if you want. My experience is that tends not to be as effective. Sometimes you might look a bit weird, but don't we all? Or if you're just wandering, if you're wandering around a room and you're just kind of moving about, what actually do the group of people that are maybe observing you know about what it is that you're doing other than moving positions? Yeah.
People often take an observing position in a meeting. You'll see them sit back a bit or just detach from, and you can detect they're totally detached from the whole meeting.
These are all things that people know how to do intrinsically. NLP is kind of, it doesn't necessarily teach you how to do anything that you don't know how to do already. It just gives you the conscious framework about the way in which you're structuring experience so that you can be at choice. If you have a conflict in a relationship, and that's actually what we're going to go into as an exercise, to be able to say, what happens if I explore it in this structured way as a way of being able to deal with improving a relationship or dealing with a conflict resolution. Yeah. So, I'd like you to get into groups of 3 and get together. Yeah? Are you in groups of 3? You can get up and get into groups of 3. And this is going to be a standing up exercise as well, I'm afraid. Could you again get yourselves into a situation where you have labelled yourselves A, B and C? If you are person A, it would be useful and beneficial for you to have identified a situation whereby there is a relationship you have with somebody else, perhaps not kind of a deep, long-rooted issues with them, so don't go for the relationship, difficult relationship you have with a family member, but somebody that you work with or somebody that you socialise with, where the relationship, could be better than it is currently. Okay? It's not going to be one where you're going to have to share a huge amount with your group. So you can share as much or as little about it as you wish. But identify yourself as person A and think of the relationship that you are talking about. Once you have got to that, let me know. So you might just kind of want to organise yourselves and make sure that you each have 2 other people to work with and an issue. You're sorted, sorted, sorted. Done? When you've done that, person A, pick of the 2 people that you have to work with, somebody who is going to represent for you this other person. Okay? And give that person some direction about where you would like them to stand and the way in which they would stand if they were being the other person. Yeah? They can... Person A, with person B, so they get person B to take a position. Yeah? Yeah? Any questions? We okay? Yeah, so if you're person A, you have now placed person B somewhere, being the other person in this relationship. Could you now take person C and give them some instructions about somewhere else in the room to go, because they are going to take this third perspective. You can send them anywhere you'd like. Yes. Okay, and then put your hand up, person A, once you've done that. So everybody that is a person A has a difficult relationship that they are thinking of. They are looking at person B, who is representing the other person in this relationship, and they have placed person C somewhere else within the room. Yes? Yeah. Yes. Excellent. Right. Yes. Person A. Okay. Yeah. Great. Person A, you're going to be the people who are going to explore this. We don't have time to go through it all the way around for everybody to get a chance to do it this evening. Person A, you're going to explore this from your own perspective. We're then going to shift you around to allow you to have a different perspective, and you're going to go through each of those different positions. Okay? So, person A, what you're going to do first of all is tell the group, if they are within listening distance. If they're not within listening distance, then they're just going to have to watch what you're doing. Okay? Talk about the issue to your group, just very briefly, about, from your perspective, what is going on in this relationship between you and the other person. Just for a minute. Just in your groups.
I'm a friend who I sort of lost contact with. Someone I used to work with, and I've emailed her.
Just, no, if that's where they place you, I would just watch it from here, yeah. If you've been placed at a distance, stay at a distance.
She phoned me while I was off skiing 3 months ago, and I said, oh, sorry, I'll get back when I've got back. So I didn't text her when I was back, and I didn't hear from her, so I'm not sure what's going on. That's why you're in that.
Right, okay. So hopefully if you've been person A, you've had chance to experience this relationship from your own perspective for a minute. Okay? What you are going to do now is to switch places with the person who is being person B. Okay? And person B, person B is going to go to the observer position. Person who is in the observer position is going to go to where person A is stood. Person A is going to go to where person B is stood. Okay? Okay? Everybody there? So if you are person A, can I just check you are now stood in the position where you placed person B? Yeah? Person C, you are now stood in the position where person A was. And person B, you are now stood in the observer position somewhere else within the room. Yes? Okay. Okay. So, what I want you to do, person A, is to look back at yourself. Be, for a minute, just 1 minute, the other person in this relationship. I want you to imagine that you are them. So you can stand like them, or sit like them, you can talk like them. You imagine yourself looking at the world through their eyes, looking back at yourself, and imagine and talk to yourself about what is going on in this issue, okay, from the perspective of the other person. So you are now in this second position spot, looking back at yourself and imagining what life is like to be the other side of the relationship.
Our observer didn't hear us.
Yeah, if you are the observer and you can't hear, that's okay. So if the observer watched it, then you're just getting a different perspective from hearing. You're just getting to be holding this position while you're talking back to yourself. Yeah? Yeah? Okay. See how you get on.
So it's the old person A.
Person A is
The
now,
old person A.
yeah, the first person. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so you be, so I don't know what your name is, you be the other person in the relationship talking back to yourself, and you're holding the position as to being Raymond. Yeah, so what's it like being you as the other person talking about the problem you have in your relationship with Raymond, who stood there? Yeah, yeah. So tell Raymond what it's like to be you in the relationship you have with him. That makes sense?
I've got a young child, I'm stressed out. I'm trying to just think of it seems to be sensible. It's not happening, so maybe he's a bit upset about that. Not interested anymore. Just get on with what I've got to get on with. I've got other stuff to get on with, so it'll wait.
You don't have to react, no. No. Okay. Is there anything else kind of notice? Okay. So you should have had a chance to do that, right? So now if you are the original person A, okay, you are now going to move to the place that you put person C, so the observer position, and the other two people are going to hold the space where you and the other person you have the relationship with is. Okay, so move yourselves around in the room, so.
So it's just another turn of the cycle.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
Ah, okay. We already have somebody saying that's interesting. So if the person who is now observing this, look back at you and the other person in this relationship as they hold the two spaces that your group are holding for you, from the perspective that you have where you are observing the relationship between the two of them. Okay? And I just want you to look from a different perspective at this relationship between these two people and notice what you notice taking that perspective. Okay, it may be that you've got something you can share with the group that there, because it may be that you just want to sit and have a look. Yeah. It also may be that once you've had a look from the perspective that you're in, that you might want to have a wander around and look at the relationship between the two people from different angles within the room, and that is okay too. So just take a minute or two to do that.
You both stood here. I've just noticed that the relationship is the same for both. Half facing each other. Identical. Both in exactly the same. You're in exactly the same position. The relationship is the same. One's facing, one's right, one's half facing, one's half facing. What it's doing just by the way you're facing. That makes sense. Standing there, I thought I was facing them. Standing there, I thought I was facing the way. Standing here, I can see both of those things going on at the same time, and they're equal. So effectively, both people. I didn't take action. Do something about it.
Once you've had a chance to do that, you can have a bit of a share with your group about what you noticed and then come and sit back down.
chose from my so that's what he felt. That's what the lady it doesn't mean I've been told I've been a bad person. That's not to me. Just, I'm not sure what's going on. So I just haven't had any. So that's why I started with there. When I got there, it was really obvious to me
Some interesting things going on at the back of the room.
Yes.
So if you'd like to come and take a seat back down. Just grab one wherever you can. So, what was that like? What did anybody notice? Thought was kind of good, weird, indifferent?
There's a lot of laughter.
There's a lot of laughter. Yeah, thinking, what the hell did I do coming to this tonight? Yes. Yeah. Yes.
The obvious thing was the other two guys had a damn sight better relationship than the one I postulated.
Ah, okay. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
We couldn't sustain the scenario. That was the
Okay.
most obvious thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's very difficult to really imagine from another perspective.
Yes, can be. It can be. Ah, okay. So you noticed that kind of stretch in terms of trying to sit in somebody else's position. Yeah. Yeah. Did you manage to get kind of a sense of it? Yeah. Yeah. Robert Dilts, who's one of the guys that talks, he's a very big developer of NLP. When he talks about relationship, he tells a story of a lady that was kind of holding quite a lot of trauma from a relationship that she had with her mother. And whenever she used to describe the relationship that she had with her mother, she used to take on her mother's gestures. So the story is that her mother had tried to strangle her. And when she told the story about being strangled, she would be doing this. Okay. So who, when she's doing this gesture, is she holding the perspective of? It's not her perspective as the child. Yeah. It's the relationship to the mother. And what he talks about is, in order to have a relationship with another human being, you have to be able to hold within yourself your reflection, your version of that relationship, of them, in order to be able to hold them in relationship to yourself. So it is difficult. It is something that comes with a bit of practice. But as long as there is a relationship between two people, you have your interpretation, which is the best you're ever going to get, of what's going on from the other side of the fence, so to speak. So that's something that you can kind of practice and think about. Yeah. Who had some different insights or kind of looked at their relationship in a slightly different way, or kind of had a different thought about it, experienced it in a different way? Yes.
Well, when I took the objective position, I won't go into the details, but in a sense I felt there was some element of what I was doing wrong when I was in my position.
Okay.
The other one, when I was in the other person's position, I was sort of thinking, well, also, what am I doing wrong? Why am I being ignored? But as soon as I got in the third position, I could see both were in exactly the same position.
Okay.
It was even, in fact, they were symmetrical in a way.
Yeah.
What was going on was symmetric.
Okay. And so did that give you some different information, or does that allow you...
That, well, it's, either of us can make a change to fix that.
Okay. Okay.
And it's not sort of, I shouldn't feel guilty about not doing it. If I don't do it, I don't do it. If she doesn't do it, she doesn't do it. But but it was just the fact that they were symmetrical as soon as I stood apart from it. Yet it didn't feel like that when I was in the other positions.
Yeah. And that's the great thing about this, is you kind of get a different perspective. You pick up different information. Sometimes that kind of gives you different choices about what you can do within that relationship to affect a change. Yeah. So great. Yeah. Yes.
I was originally in the observer position, as I see. When I found myself in the B position, I found myself making excuses for the person being complained of.
Okay.
In a manner of speaking.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting.
Which was sort of because I knew nothing about them, I was really trying to sort of put myself into into what into the feelings they might have been having when they were in the area of conflict. That's quite the right.
And did that kind of, was that interesting? Was it a different experience for you to do that? What kind of happened for you?
Well, it made me realise that possibly that I don't know. I'm not quite sure whether or not.
I'm not sure who I am anymore. Is it something like that? Yeah.
Somehow I feel we somewhat fluffed the situation when I was in the position of A.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we are. You know, that's okay too. This is kind of a top level introduction to an exercise which has kind of got much more deeper layers to it, whereby you really do associate into the other person and you kind of understand what's coming from their perspective, what their positive intention is behind the way in which they are behaving. One of the things we talk about in NLP is that people are not their behaviour, which when somebody is behaving in a way that's getting your back up is quite difficult to be able to kind of hold and to believe. But be able to kind of step over to their shoes or to see it from a different perspective does change that relationship or your interpretation and the way you're relating to that relationship in a slightly different way. Yeah. Were there any other comments or? Yeah.
Well, just as the outside observer, I found that I was not really interested in the individuals, or I didn't have any investment in the dispute. Just I was more concerned with the collateral damage in terms of the, like they're shouting or they're not getting on, stopping something else happening.
Yeah.
So I just felt like, why don't they just sort it out and get on with sort of the job because they're stopping something else happening.
Okay. So when you go back to then that original position, you can kind of have an awareness of the impact that your relationship is having on the other people who are around that. Yeah, that maybe changes some of your motivation to how you deal with that as well. Yeah, great. Okay. So, that's a brief introduction to perceptual positions. I don't know if you would add anything to it, Rob?
Yeah, if we were doing this on a kind of a 2-day training course, then everyone would get the chance to be the explorer. And obviously only 1/3 of us have had that opportunity tonight. But it's a technique you can take away and practice, in a quiet place. And of course, if you're doing this in a room where there are 3 spaces and someone is just gently acting as a coach, because it's hard to experience it and do the coaching role, to take through the process at the same time. So those who haven't been if you want to, you can try it out. Mahatma Gandhi, it said that he used to perform major meetings with other heads of state. Used to literally, in the meeting they're going to be in, used to sit in his own chair and the chairs where the other key people were going to be sitting. And he was going through a version of this process himself. And he rotated around the chair several times until he felt he got where he felt the starting point was the other people in negotiations. So he used it to get extra insights into where they were coming from.
It's an exercise I've used personally as well. I was a few years ago doing a payroll integration project. I was working very closely with the provider that we were using for that. And the project manager and I did not get on, I think it would be safe to say. We used to sit and have these meetings where we both would kind of come out just feeling like, that was torture. And we did this exercise together. We kind of got to a point where we had to do something. And we realised it was all about time and the way that the information was being delivered. He would sit down with me and tell me about the next 6 months. After about the second week of the description, I would have kind of drifted off somewhere and wouldn't be listening to him, which he interpreted as being incredibly rude. But I was sitting there thinking about the thing that I needed to do today to keep the project on track, and thought that him telling me about where we were going to be in 5 months' time was a complete waste of my time. And that was where the conflict lay. We kind of got to a point where we looked at it from the different perspectives, and we agreed that he would just turn up and say, right, tomorrow, Linda, I want you to do this, 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 and this. which he had not wanted to do beforehand because he thought that would be kind of being dictatorial and being bossy about what I needed to do. But I thought, that's great, I've just been told what I need to do and off I could go off and do it. And after we did that, we had a much better understanding, we worked together in a much better way, and we got the project kind of relationship going a lot better. So that's kind of a personal example to share with you of how we've done that. Okay? All right. So that's perceptual positions. The other thing we wanted to do with you then this evening, kind of really quickly before you finish, is a little bit about outcome orientation. So there's another exercise where you need to stand up and find yourself a person, one other person, and stand opposite them.
Someone new.
Somebody different.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, if you could label yourselves A and B. If you are person A, you are to take your dominant hand, left or right.
Sorry, are we A and B again?
Yeah, so label yourselves A and B. If you are A, take your dominant hand and put it out like this. Okay? Person B, you are going to take the opposite hand, this person, and you're going to meet palm to palm. So, like this. Right? You will see? Yeah? So you're just meeting palm to palm with the person that's opposite you. Yeah? Yeah. Yeah. That's it. Almost like you're having a handshake. B, your job is to provide resistance. A, your job is to move your hand that way. So you're kind of pushing against each other. Okay? So just, don't push the other person over, be gentle. It's not an arm wrestle, but I just want you to, don't anybody kind of have an aneurysm. But A, you're trying to move your hand across. Okay? And just do that. B, you're just providing resistance. You're just resisting. B, you are just resisting. A, try and move your hand. And just notice what that's like to do it. Push, give it a good go. Yeah. See how hard it is to resist against the other person's hand. Okay? And then stop. Person A, so if you've been stood like this, person B's got their hand in the middle, right? You take your other hand, and I want you to put it there, so that you have either of your hands either side. Okay? What you're then going to do is to meet palm to palm with person B, again. Okay? And I want you to look at your other hand. So you're looking at this free hand, and I want you to move your two hands together. So hold your hand straight. B, provide resistance. You're moving the other person's hand to meet your other hand. Okay? Does that make sense? Look at your free hand when you do it. So hold this hand fixed. You're moving to it. Yeah, B just is holding resistance. Okay?
Does my non-dominant hand stay still? Or am I bringing it
Stay still. Your hand that is free just stays still where it is. So you're moving the hand which is meeting the resistance. Rob, could I have your hand? You're moving. Can you all see my hands? Yeah? Right? So you're moving. I'm trying to move Rob's hand, but towards that hand that I'm looking at. Yeah? See how you get on? I'm worn out. And then once you've done that, swap over so that person B gets the chance to try and move the hand. So first time round, you just meet two hands together. Okay, so first time, just the two hands, just meeting. Second time, you bring your other hand up and you look at that hand and try and move your hand towards it. And so then look, hold this hand here, look at this hand.
And push.
Yeah? Okay, maybe something in the description on that one. What did people notice?
Yes.
Pardon?
That's bizarre, isn't it?
I won. He beat you. What did you notice about the difference between holding your hand out and moving towards it than just having the resistance? So it was easier for you when you had your other hand out. Okay. 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 Great. What else did people notice?
Not a lot easier, but a bit easier.
It was a bit easier. Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
it really easy, or do you just feel it's easier?
It felt easier. It felt easier.
I just wonder whether the effect is on the person offering resistance rather than in the perception of.
Okay. Take a seat. Yeah. The reason that it's easier, I don't know if I demonstrated it well enough, but the reason it's easier is because if you're focusing on where you're going, rather than focusing on the resistance, it is easier for you to move the hand across. So you, as you said, it was easier for me to do it. It felt easier than just focusing on the resistance. Yeah?
The B person can see your hand and could resist in proportion.
Potentially because of the way that person B is resisting, but also because of the way that if you're focused on where you're going, it's easier to have a target to it.
Being
Yeah.
able to see A's other hand would
Yeah.
focus their attention into not allowing their hand to move.
Yes, yeah, perhaps. And this kind of comes back to what, sorry, was it?
Sorry, I think it would still work if you had your eyes closed on both hands.
Yes, it does. It does. Yeah, it does. It does. You can do it. There's another exercise you can do. These all kind of come from martial arts, where you're kind of imagining something happening to your arm, and the person's pushing up or down, and it becomes much easier to provide a kind of fixed point of resistance. Yeah. The quote that I often use when I'm talking about outcome orientation then is this one. If you don't know which port you are sailing to, then no wind will be favourable. Okay. And this is one of the real core principles about NLP around setting a direction and making sure that you have a really clear outcome. How many of us, when we ask somebody what they want, will hear a litany of things that that person doesn't want or that they want to avoid. Yeah? And that typically happens, it's something that often happens in kind of risk-related roles, kind of insurances, finance, those kinds of things. It's also quite a typically British thing to do. Culturally, we like to kind of say, you know, how are you doing? Well, I'm not too bad. Yeah, it's very different to kind of when you meet Americans and they go, hell yeah, I'm amazing, it's great, and we all kind of go, we're not too sure about that.
Quite like the right words is I'm good.
Yes, yeah, whatever they say, and we kind of feel ourselves backing away from it a little bit, don't we?
May I say, I think that's extremely cultural.
Yes, it's a sweeping generalisation that I appreciate.
So. If you look at other cultures, I spent quite some time dealing with Russians, and they don't operate like that at all. They know exactly what.
Yeah. This is, that's, you know,
no, they can't.
yeah, they can't have
But
this.
they ask for it.
Okay. Do you want to do this?
Someone I know in molecular biology, so they work worldwide, is when they send CVs to, if you get a report or a CV from a reference from someone in America, there'll be a lot of positive things about the person, whereas a reference from someone who's British, or in fact Australian at the time, tend to be more subtle about what the positives are. So you'd read, if you got two references from two different cultures, they'd read quite differently, and yet what was going on with those two people was probably pretty similar. It's just how it was expressed.
Culturally, the way that we learn how to behave and how to operate is fascinating. It's why kind of increasingly globalised business culture clashes, you know, shaking hands, all of those kind of things, looking people in the eye, it can cause all sorts of different difficulties.
The Japanese person says that it'll be this will be very difficult. What they mean is they don't want to do it. And what someone else sees is that actually all I need to do is understand what I need to overcome, and they're being told don't do it.
Yeah.
And yet what they're going is what.
Nice examples from both of you of the fact you have to calibrate cultures.
Yeah.
And a lot of this stuff is about you calibrate individual people.
Yeah. It's like there's a guy that he's Polish. He used to work for Tesco's. He's a friend of mine, and he said it took him a really long time when he came to the UK and he had a UK boss. Every time he used to do something, and he'd go and he'd give it to his boss, and his boss would say, "That's interesting." He thought that was great. And he said after a while it kind of settled in, and he realised that when his boss went, that's interesting, his boss actually meant, that's really crap, can you go and do something, can you go and do it again please? But he just had no kind of reference point. He was like, oh, I'm doing some really interesting work. This model then is something that I think we've got a handout that we'll be able to send around to you. It's called the PACER model. It's about how you can use questioning techniques when you're talking to people to make sure that you get a really good outcome. We will go back to what we were talking at the very beginning about what makes a good or a bad project, and people were talking about requirements and expectations and all of those kinds of things. If you are working with people where you want to elicit and make sure that you are delivering something that they actually really want, then these are great questions to be able to use to test out with somebody if what they're telling you they want is actually what they want, and if they have imagined in their futures what it is like. So,
just very quickly, I see people writing, we'll send you a copy of the slides, and there is a handout on this technique in particular.
So I'd like everybody in the room, just for a second, to think about a goal they have, something that they want. Done that? Yeah? Do you want to flick to the next slide? We're going to talk about the P. Okay? So this is P stands for positive. Yeah? In NLP, what we talk about when we're talking about goals is making sure that the thing that you want is what is something that is stated in the positive. So it is not what you don't want or what you want to avoid. How many of you, when you think of the goal that you just had in your head, had something that was like, I want to lose weight, I want to stop worrying, I want to avoid this situation happening? Yeah? It's just a show of hands, kind of other people. Yeah? 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 Okay. Versus the ones that are kind of, you know, I want to be able to do this, I want to hit this milestone. I want to be able to manage this, I want to have flexibility. Something that you do want rather than something that you don't. Yeah? Or something that you want to have rather than something that you want to lose. You know, classic, I want to stop smoking. Okay. Well, what will you have instead then? Yeah, because it's all about wanting to lose something rather than what you're going to gain. Okay. This is one of the areas where people get really stuck. Okay. Somebody got one that sort of was more on that side that they would be happy to share with the group.
Well, I want to have a day off before the end of the month.
I want to have a day off before the end of the month. Okay.
Which is a sort of positive negative, isn't it?
Sort of positive. Okay. So what is it that you do want?
Well, some rest.
You want some rest. Okay. Okay. So that's different too. I want to have the day off. Yeah. Okay. Okay. What does it seem like for you to say I want to have some rest versus I want to have a day off? How is it different?
I suppose having some rest is kind of internal, whereas a day off is in the framework of your work.
Okay. Okay. And what does that do to think about it in that way?
Makes it a bit more immediate, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So just a very, very subtle shift between something that kind of does do something differently to the way that you hold it. Yeah. Okay. Any others people have?
I also think on Jonathan's point, wanting to have a day of rest feels positive because he's got that time to do something, whereas I want to take a day off means that it feels more negative.
Yeah.
That I have to make sure it happens as opposed to the other one is.
Yeah. When we make goals attractive and there's motivation and there's feelings that are attached to it, you know, what's it like for all of you when you feel completely unstoppable because there's something that's there for you that you really, really do want? How many of us have ever gone on a diet and gone, right, I want to lose weight, I'm not going to eat this, I'm not going to eat that, I'm going to go to the gym 17 times a week, whatever it is that you kind of have come up with. And, you know, already that feels like torture because I'm just eating dry crackers and drinking water for the next 6 months. Versus kind of imagining, you know, right, I'm going to go and I'm going to enter a race or I'm going to do something like this and I'm going to go and play football with my kids or whatever it is that you want. That feels differently, and you can all imagine what that's like for you in your own minds to do that. People, when they're talking about projects, I mean, these are quite personal examples. Often when they go to start work on a project, it's because something is going wrong, or something is broken, or they need to save money, or they need to kind of cut costs, or all of those kinds of things that they're kind of forced to do something, or they're moving away from. How often when you're working with people are they kind of thinking about the budgetary rather than what it will be like for them once they have implemented the project that you're working on. Yeah. And being able to get people conversationally to do that shift can be a very powerful thing to be able to do when you're working with them. So it's a really great kind of question to use. Okay. The next one. Okay. Next one is about achievement and getting those motivation elements that we talked about really clear in people's minds. Okay. So I'm going to ask you to pair up again, just to grab a space where you can sit with somebody. And to share with them the goal that you just thought of in your mind. Okay, so it might be, so for me, I want to run the marathon that I've entered in next Saturday, and I want to do it in 4 hours. Okay, so that would be my goal. Okay, your job as coaching me would be to go through these questions with me, to kind of help me to get a real sense of what it'll be like for me once I have done it. Okay? So somebody got a goal that they would like to share with the group? Can just kind of demonstrate this? Yeah?
Property in St Ives called Pedmore, worth 1.35 million by 18th of March 2018.
Okay. Very specific goal.
Extremely specific.
Okay.
Some goal processing, you can tell.
Okay. So this is a place that you have in your mind that you would like to be able to. I've got. He has a picture of it.
Not with you, no.
Not with you. Okay. So imagine for a second that you've done that. It's 2018 and you have it. Okay. Is it okay for people to look at you while I ask you these questions? See what happens. Watch his non-verbals as we go through this process.
Okay, all of you. No, I gave permission for you.
Yeah. Just imagine for a second that you have it.
Yep.
Yeah. Tell me what it'll be like for you when you have this property in. Is it in St Ives?
St Ives.
St Ives. When you have this property in St Ives, you've moved in. You're there. It's 2018. Imagine that for a second and tell me what it would be like for you to have that goal.
Fantastic is the first word that comes to mind.
Okay, we can see some non-verbals there already.
But it's on the coast. It's right by the sea. I'll be able to see the sea, hear the sea. It's got a nice garden. It's a 3-storey property. I'll be able to have lots of friends to stay over and relatives, and I'll be able to entertain, and I'll be able to walk to the pub.
That's fantastic. Okay, so you hear from what he was saying, you've already got a picture of this in your mind, haven't you? That you're kind of there. You can see the garden, so he can see what he's going to see when he gets there. You can hear the sea, I think you said.
Yes.
Yeah, and kind of sounds of family, friends, entertaining kind of going on. And it's going to feel what? What's it going? It's going to feel fantastic. What do you notice when you kind of imagine that about what fantastic feels like for you?
Euphoria.
Euphoria.
Nearly, anyway.
Yeah. And what's that like for you?
Good, like floating on air.
It's like floating on air. Okay. Okay. How are you going to know that you've got that kind of sense of floating? You know, you move in, you definitely know you've got it. How are you going to know that when you've got that sense of euphoria, that you're floating on air? What's it going to be like?
Well, maybe it's exactly how I imagine it to be.
Exactly how you imagine it.
But I don't know until I'm there, do I?
Yeah, you can imagine it though.
I can imagine it for sure.
Yeah.
I visualise it.
Yeah. Who, when they're looking at, sorry, I can't see your name.
That's Terry.
Who, when they're looking at Terry, can kind of get a sense of the fact that he has very clearly imagined what it's going to be like. Do you feel quite motivated towards this goal? Yes. Oh, yes. Yes. Okay. So something that you've done some work on that already. Yeah. Okay. What we're going to ask you to do is to get into pairs. You're going to have a few minutes each way, so you want to explore each other's goals. You've got the questions that are there. Share with the person that you're working with what your goal is. Might be one that you have kind of quite clearly in mind. It might also be one that, you know, if you've just switched it from being I want to stop smoking to I want to be able to play football in the park with my kids, that it might be slightly different to be able to explore it. So just kind of shifting it around a little bit. Ask them these questions. Yeah? What will it be like when you've got it? What are you going to see when you've got it? What kind of things will you hear when you have it? How are you going to feel? What's that going to be like? Yeah? How are you going to know once you have it? And see what responses you get. We're looking for kind of the things that kind of Terry was doing, like, oh, yeah. At the end of it, ask them this question. Do you want this? Yeah, how motivated are you towards your goal? See what you get. Sometimes you're going to get, hell yeah. Other times you might get a, oh, actually, no, I don't think I do. But that's kind of about being able to explore a goal with somebody.
That's
yeah?
what happened to me when I was starting to do goals about 18 months ago.
Yeah.
Certainly, well, I really like that, and then I sort of really thought about it.
No. So,
you can sift them out.
Yeah, it's like New Year's resolutions. I'm going to go to the gym every single day, but I've also got an 80-hour week that I have to work, and I've got this, and I've kind of want to spend time with my children, and I want to spend more time with my wife, and I need to spend time with my girlfriend as well, and I've got this hang gliding thing that, you know, I like to kind of go and do. And then that 5 times a week of going to the gym just kind of sputters out. That's why gyms are all really busy in January, and then come February the 1st, there's nobody in there.
Your marathon, what's that you between?
It's on Sunday, Edinburgh. My first one. So I've done a lot of goal setting about that too. Yes. So find somebody, partner. The space is out here. No. Keep those questions in mind. Just have a few minutes each way to ask the other person those questions. If you're asking the questions, really notice what you notice about the way the person responds. Go forth and explore.
And you ideally try different goals. That's a motivating goal for it, isn't it?
Yeah. God, I want some of that. I want to go round his house and
I
have
was
dinner.
thinking, yeah, we'll all go and stay.
Yeah, lovely. Move out the way of the questions.
It's quite fun to see one of the pairs swapping places, in a different place.
Absolutely. People seem to be enjoying themselves.
Yeah, well, it's certainly engaged, aren't they? So it's more so than during the average family inside.
Just thinking like what they're going to do next. Sorry, we're in the way. Once you've done it one way, swap and coach the other person with the same questions through their goal. We've run a little bit over, but is that something that kind of people are okay with? We've run a little bit over.
From the body language, I'd say it's okay. Yeah.
Just kind of mindful of when to draw them back.
Probably fairly soon. We're running a little over, but I haven't seen anyone nodding off in trance.
Yet.
Yes. This is the last.
That's it. Yeah, it's just some feedback, and then we kind of close.
And I'm definitely keen to ask for feedback in the session. Find out what this is.
Just give them, just going to give you 1 more minute. Yes. All this is going to be on the video is just me bellowing at people. Sorry.
From a techie viewpoint, I'm quite interested to see the quality results from the iPhone video camera.
Yeah. It does that. I wonder where it's going to go.
Yeah, well, we should be wearing the glasses, shouldn't we?
Okay, so if we want to come back, appreciate you all have homes to go to and you might might want to get to them at some point this evening. It's just kind of... It's quite engaging, isn't it, when somebody asks you questions about things that are your goals and that you really want to get really kind of stuck into it. But what did anybody notice from having been asked those questions? What's it like? Any feedback?
I felt that when my partner was explaining what they wanted and their goals, I could see their light eyes lit up.
Yeah.
And also I felt that there was so much of pleasure in focusing towards something that they really wanted to get.
Yeah.
You almost felt like edging them on to say, come on, you can do it.
Yeah, you can find yourself kind of like this, can't you, talking to somebody going, that sounds really amazing. Yeah, fantastic, great. What else? People have.
By telling somebody else about it, I thought, well, actually, it's really possible, and I've told somebody else about it, I better do it.
Okay. So you got some work to do when you get home, yeah.
Telling someone else also makes it more concrete.
Yeah. Imagining that you, and this is this kind of principle of the what we call the as-if frame, imagining it as if you've already got it, gives you some very strong attractors towards it. You're kind of already starting to generate it for yourself. And these questions really allow somebody to imagine that it's possible, to imagine what it's going to be like when they get there, to already start to get a little sense of enjoying what it's going to be like to walk to the pub from your place on the coast. Kind of gives you a bit of juice, kind of motivation about whatever it is you're going to need to do in order to be able to get there.
But also a why.
And a why,
deeper reasons as to
why. Yeah, absolutely.
Or you might discover not.
Yeah.
But generally if you do discover that you do want to do it, then it's what's important about it.
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
And those words, what's important to it about you is actually one of the standard NLP questions. Very powerful.
Yes.
I don't want to be unkind, but if you're not fully committed to it and don't really know whether it's the right thing yet, is it actually a goal yet at all?
What do you want to?
Well, it's only a goal once you're absolutely committed to it. It's just a vague idea prior to that, surely.
I totally agree.
And
this is where testing that out.
This model, I mean, we've only gone through the first two. People often have vague ideas, kind of ill-formed goals, things they think they should do, things they think they ought to do, things they think they have to do. All of those kinds of things.
The hazard of calling it a goal until it's absolutely committed
well,
to
you can ask these questions to work through this with somebody. Work through this model, do it conversationally with people. Sometimes you'll get to the end. Often it happens when you get to the ecology. It's like the going to the gym example. Can I fit that in my life and that be something that ecologically fits for me? No. Okay, so it's not a goal that I actually really kind of am after. I think if we went through those questions with Terry, we'd get to the end and he'd go, yeah, I absolutely want that. Yeah, for other people,
the money to buy it.
Yeah.
That's part of the process.
That's kind of maybe that's the resources question we haven't yet got to, Terry.
I've got a plan for that.
Yeah, and that means that then when you do have it and it is a goal, it's something that we would say was very well formed, kind of met all of these criteria and conditions. Yeah, so a useful tool when you're doing something for yourself, coaching people that you manage or that you work with, or working, kind of taking requirements and that kind of thing. I wanted to give you a bit of a sense of that as a model to use, to take away. Hopefully something that kind of along with the perceptual positions can be practical things that you can start to think about using in your everyday lives. Yeah.
And in addition to helping you think through and refine the goal, it tends to help with motivation, but it also helps the luck. The old definition of luck equals preparedness meeting opportunity. Well, if it's a normal day-to-day sort of goal, you're more likely to spot something which takes you a bit in the right direction.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
So opportunities presenting themselves.
Absolutely.
Yes. Noticing the opportunities that
It's noticing and acting whilst that window's open.
Yeah. Funny how once you get something really clear in your mind, how things conspire sometimes to allow you to get it. Yeah.
This funny theory that Noel Edmonds has, that if you write something down on a bit of paper and put in an envelope, then some magic thing happens and gives it to him. But I mean, that's something like that.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a guy called Eckhart Tolle. There is the books The Secret, The Law of Attraction.
Yeah.
There's a whole self-help movement around kind of, you know, if you sit and dream about a Ferrari for long enough, then eventually one of them will turn up on your driveway.
That's his theory, but nevertheless...
Whether you go with that or not is entirely up to you, but
it does talk to the same question that you've got to...
Yes.
You've got something clear in your mind.
Yes,
that you want.
yes,
It does, but the other half of that is there's a nice phrase, take massive action.
Yeah.
Because opportunities will come up, but they're not, the Ferrari isn't going to drive entirely to you.
Yes, okay.
It should be a Bentley anyway.
Each to their own. The requisite variety, we're all about that in NLP. Okay, so that's kind of where we've got to, the end of the evening. Yeah, I hope that you have had a bit of fun. Hope that we've kind of given you a few things to maybe think about. We have got some things to send around to you. We've got a handout around those PACER model questions to use. We've got a bit more of information about the history of NLP if you're interested in it. And we're going to send the slides around as well. There's a book that I think Rob's read recently that some of you might be particularly interested in if you wanted to do some more reading about NLP.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone came, I think Peter Parks gave a session here a year or so ago, is that right? Anyway, he's written a book called NLP for Project Managers. So knowing that we were running this session, I decided to read it. And I came up with the impression he knows a lot about project, and it's including program portfolio management, and also a lot about NLP, and he's a practitioner of both. It's not just theoretical knowledge. So it's I thought it was a good read.
What's its price?
Sorry?
How much does it cost?
I can tell you in a second. Carry on, Rob.
It's probably about 16 quid or so. It won't stop you buying the 1.35.
I might have to do a sub-budget though.
Yeah. Might help you get there quicker, you never know.
Sounds like it might, yes.
Yeah. And it'd be nice to share a little bit about PPD learning.
So PPD Learning is a training organisation based in central London with a lady called Judith Lowe. This is how Rob and I have met each other, through both of us going and doing training with PPD. We thought we'd mention them this evening because if you are interested in NLP, to go and do a practitioner course or a master practitioner course, you are looking at quite an investment of time. You know, I've done something like 45 days of training last year alone in some of these techniques. We are just very much scratching the surface this evening, kind of hopefully whetting your appetites. But if any of you are people who do public speaking or you are ever presenting, Judith is doing an event in early July, which is just a one-day kind of taster. Enjoy public speaking with NLP. So that might be something that some of you might be interested in checking out. You can do so via PPD Learning. Yeah.
When you get the slides, those of you want, the web link for that session is
down the bottom.
It's just off the screen there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I also put all of my contact details up. You can find me in all sorts of places. I will happily talk about NLP pretty much all day, every day. So if you have questions about it, you're interested in anything, you kind of want to find me. It's not very clear on there, but it's on the slides, or you can take a card after today. Yeah. So, I hope you've had fun. Thank you for being such good sports and getting stuck in and doing whatever weird stuff we asked you to do. Yes, it was great. I like that. And thank you very much.